Simon's in Grimsby. Interesting place, Grimsby. Simon, what would you like to say?
Hiya, James.
Hello, mate.
Firstly, I initially voted to leave the EU.
Fair enough.
And I did for a good few months, actually, and I believed all the rhetoric of we'd be better off financially and blah, blah, blah. And then it was actually listening to you that I actually started opening my mind and listening and taking it a bit more serious. Because, to be honest with you, it was more of a protest vote than anything.
Makes sense.
So once I started realising what I'd actually done, it was obviously too late by then. So now I want to obviously stay in. So when you hear Theresa May saying it's the will of the people, it just don't make any sense, because over the last 2 years we found out a lot more now than we did 2 years ago. So I can't understand how she can still get away with saying it's the will of the people. It just boggles your mind, to be honest with you.
Well, I do. Oddly enough, I have a better insight to that this morning than I did at this point yesterday, because of what Dominic Raab said on Ian Dale's show last night, when I essentially pointed out that people like you, if you'll allow me to say this, Simon, there is no shame in thinking that Brexit was a good idea because of the effort and the expense, some of it legal, some of it not legal, put into persuading you that it was a good idea. The notion that arch Remainers like me feel anything other than warmth towards you is a lie. But what Dominic Raab tried to do last night when Ian read out a tweet that I'd sent, making precisely that point, if you don't do this stuff for a living, there is absolutely no shame in having believed that Brexit was a good idea. That's you. If you do it for a living, and you're still pretending that Brexit could have been anything other than this mess, then you're an absolute disgrace. And what people like Dominic Raab do in response to that is that they claim that I'm patronising you. They claim that I'm insulting you. They claim that I'm the establishment somehow, and that the reason that Leave won is because people like me have turned out to be right. And because we're pointing out how right we are, that makes us smug and condescending and sneering. So Theresa May can get away with this nonsense, as you describe it, as a Grimsby resident and former Leave voter. Nothing says fully paid up member of the establishment like that, Simon, as long as we can all acknowledge that the very nucleus of the establishment is in Grimsby. He can inflate her nonsense by essentially turning the whole debate on its head. You voted Leave because people like me have turned out to be right. That's the logic that she's feeding on, mate.
Yeah, I mean, you hear about this bus, and that was a massive factor, actually, when you hear about the NHS. That was one of the biggest
It was a brilliant
why
masterstroke. It was attacked. It was a masterstroke. And what I mean when I say if you don't do this stuff for a living is that you don't spend 2 hours every morning picking over the carcass of yesterday's news looking for the choicest morsels. You just see the bus and you go, oh, that's good.
2 years ago, James, 2 years ago, we wouldn't have had a clue what we was actually really letting ourselves in for as a normal civilian who don't really, like you say, pick over all the newspapers. And
it's not your job.
Just a random bloke who walks around every day just doing his own little thing, listening. You don't go into all that massive amount of detail, what obviously...
Of course you don't. And you trust the people that do it for a living, up to a point. I mean, there's going to be disagreement, there's going to be debate, but if you're in the media or you're in politics, you presume, as a voter and a consumer of media, that there is some base level of integrity or honesty that you're not allowed to go below. People like Dominic Raab live below it, mate, and they remain there. You know, every time he puts his head above that base level, he says things like, well, no, of course I haven't read the Good Friday Agreement, or, do you know what? It wasn't until I became Secretary of State for Brexit that I realised how important the Dover-Calais crossing was to UK trade. I mean, how can what do you do for a living, Simon, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm actually disabled. I was in the army, but I'm disabled now.
Well, thank you for your service, and I'm sorry for your disability. But when you were in the army, could you imagine if your CO had turned around and said, you know, until I got this posting, I hadn't realised how important guns are to what we do?
Yeah.
That would be the Dominic Raab equivalent in a military context. I tell you what, chaps, these guns are rather good, aren't they? I didn't realise until I got this gig just what bullets are for. Turns out they're rather more important than I realised. And yet he turns around to you and says that you voted to leave because you've had enough of people like me.
No. I think Theresa May is just hoping that people are sick and tired of it enough to just call it a day.
She absolutely is.
That's what she's banking on doing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and it might work.
That people are tired of it.
It might work.
It might just do, but I'm just hoping and praying that it's not too late to
Cometh the hour,
to
cometh the
change
man,
people's
but who
minds.
is the man? I mean, it's not Jeremy Corbyn. I think we could probably almost all agree. Simon, thank you for the call, mate. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate your honesty.